Journalist Lucy Taylor is joining us from Moscow, and our own Jonathan Sacerdoti is in London. Jonathan, Theresa May, I think, got some of what she wanted here. We have those three other nations signing on with her, a powerful joint statement, but there is not a clear call to action in that statement. Where does the UK government take this next?
There isn't yet that clear call to action, and Theresa May is still, despite those announcements she made initially, not giving away too many details, other than those initial steps that she's taking, for example, sending away those Russian diplomats and the like. She's still keeping her cards close to her chest. This is the first wave. In a somewhat awkwardly delivered speech this morning, the UK Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson said Russia should go away and shut up in response to UK actions. Things like that keep happening. We keep hearing tough talk, sometimes even a little bit childish like that, but so far, further actions are not forthcoming, and we still haven't really seen what the Russians are going to do to retaliate either.
Lucy, President Putin was not impressed by threats made by the United Kingdom. That's clear. This latest statement, the U.S. joining in Germany, France, is that likely to make any impression on the Kremlin?
Well, probably not. In short, President Putin, if he is worried about it, he hasn't been showing it over the last few days. He, of course, has presidential elections to contend with on Sunday, and he's been campaigning as normal and largely leaving the business of international diplomacy to his foreign ministry. The reaction from Russia in general has been anger, fury, and complete denial that they had anything to do with this attack last week. They call it Russophobia. They say that this is an attack from the West, in particular from the UK, on Russia itself. They call these the comments insane from Prime Minister May. So very much anger and denial.
Jonathan, so if the UK does not actually take concrete action now, if Theresa May does not come up with those next steps beyond that statement, what then? Because this really is a major test for Europe in terms of how to react to Russia, not really just in this issue, but across the board, whether it's in Russia's actions in the Middle East or interfering in European elections.
So I think Theresa May came out very strong in the beginning. She said what she had to say, and she put in place some measures. She gave just a week to those Russian diplomats to leave the country. But then for the next steps, I think she was waiting to see, firstly, if she'd get strong support from her allies abroad. She seems to be getting that, at least in their declarations. And secondly, I think she wants to see what Russia actually does in response to these actions she's already taken. She wants to see if this is a spiral of diplomatic degradation, or if instead that this is going to take place, Russia won't react too strongly against the UK, and then maybe she'll check what she needs to do next. Remember, this is a very tense situation for her because she does want to show very firmly that this sort of action within the UK or anywhere around the world is totally unacceptable for Russia to use military-grade nerve agents attacking people in British soil. But on the other hand, she doesn't want to start a diplomatic spiral which will lead to who knows where.
Lucy, you mentioned those elections coming up. Do you have any sense of how this affair and all these latest developments are playing out with the Russian public?
Yes, well, of course, President Putin himself paints a picture of international relations of a hostile West, which is against Russia, and he very much portrays himself as the defender of Russia. He takes credit for restoring Russia as a superpower against a hostile West. So the events of the last week, the last 2 weeks, have almost played into that picture. They've helped his portrayal of himself. If there will be an effect on the election, I think he will try to make that the effect. They look more to President Putin. Of course, Putin is likely to win that election anyway. His main challenger is barred from standing, Alexei Navalny, and Putin himself has very favourable coverage from state media. So we know it's very likely, it's widely expected that Putin will win that election. What the actual Russian people feel of this affair, you won't see that on state media. On social media, people are talking about it more, but as I say, there isn't a very fair picture portrayed, perhaps you might say. Putin himself trying to play into this picture of a hostile West?
Well, we see governments around the world, from Europe to the United States, sort of struggling with how exactly to respond to Russia on various issues and just how tough to be. When you see, I mean, from your vantage point in Moscow and covering the Russian government, is there anything that you think that these governments can actually do that will actually rein in Vladimir Putin, that might change his calculus and how he intervenes in world affairs?
Well, that's a very difficult question, isn't it? And it's one that there isn't an easy answer to. Certainly governments have taken a number of different stances. In particular, today we've seen the introduction of sanctions from the US against Russia, not about the events of this week, but looking back to the 2016 US election, which the US accuses Russia of interfering in, and also cyber attacks over the last year, which the US and others accuse Russia of having been behind. Those economic sanctions, though, so far also don't seem to have Russia particularly concerned. We've already had a response from the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Rabkov, who says that Russia will retaliate in kind, which is what we probably would expect. There are also already a number of sanctions against individuals. One of the men on the list of sanctions today, the businessman Evgeny Prozhizhin, says he's not worried because he doesn't have business in the US. People have been expecting more sanctions for quite some time. He said if he takes any action, it will be just to simply stop eating at McDonald's and protest. So it's difficult to know exactly what would change Russia's behavior at this point.
All right, Lucy Taylor in Moscow and our Jonathan Sacerdoti in London. Great to have you both with us.